Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to a special edition of Doom Mod Madness. You may be wondering what exactly the Doomed demo disc is, how I specifically obtained it. Was it sent to me in the mail? Was it thrown through my window attached to a cinder block? None of the above. In reality, it's an elaborate contrivance that allows me to distill my thoughts and opinions on a variety of highly impressive Doom mod demos that I've had the pleasure of playing recently into one convenient video. The three demos featured today include Ashes Afterglow, Treasure Tech Land, and the Quake 2 Total Conversion. The first two I have prior experience with, first in the form of Ashes 2063, and the second in the form of the original Treasure Tech gameplay mod. If you're interested in knowing my opinion on either of those before delving any deeper here, you'll find the link for those particular videos in the description below. So, first things first, we have the demo for Ashes Afterglow. And yes, I feel compelled to remind everyone that this is in fact a Doom mod, not a build engine mod. But you'd be easily forgiven for assuming so. It takes a lot of its design cues from that style of mapping, that style of design, a lot more dedication to tangibly realistic environments, and this is aided no end by a canny selection of just crunchy, dilapidated looking textures, as well as some real impressive sector usage, specifically when it comes to conveying crumbling buildings and just this overall sense of urban decay. There is just a genuine sense of detail here that honestly just plain impresses the shit out of me. Something else that I quite enjoy about Ashes, and something that's happily retained here in Afterglow too, is also its overall vibe. It's very much an 80s infused post-apocalypse, something that is quite apparent when you take a closer look at enemy designs, particularly the neon-colored mohawks of the raiders. You'll also see some very brightly dressed mannequins during certain sections taking place within a dilapidated mall, and something else that's overlaid and greatly contributes to this vibe is the soundtrack. Courtesy of the very talented composer Primeval, it's got more than a faint hint of John Carpenter to it, and if I'm going to be perfectly honest, it fits like a glove. As for the content of the demo itself, it is a first sizable chunk of gameplay, somewhat surprisingly so. It took me about an hour and a half on average to get through what's available here, and that was including all of my secret hunting, all of my poking about. And believe me, poking about is greatly incentivized here, especially if you're playing on anything like survivalist difficulty or above. Ammo in these cases becomes much less plentiful, and you do take more damage from enemies, so sniffing about, finding those hidden caches with that vital bit of extra health or ammunition greatly contributes to that feeling of being this post-apocalyptic scavenger just living barely on the edge of their means. Progression-wise, you'll discover that this isn't simply just a linear sequence of levels. Instead, you've got quite a wonderfully interlinked sequence of locations threaded together via this underground subway system. Making a reappearance from the preceding entry of Ashes, you'll also revisit this friendly station, replete with interactable NPCs, which can give you vital hints on how to progress next, as well as shopkeepers who can grant you supplies such as extra ammo and health. Upgrades are also doable here, courtesy of workbenches, but mercifully, you don't have to trundle all the way back to this station in order to do so. You'll occasionally find them scattered in the wild. I'd say one of the downsides of covering this demo in this particular format is that it's actually quite difficult to convey just how good the level design in Ashes Afterglow is. And I'm not just talking about the overarching interlinked nature of the locations here, I'm also talking about just how intricate and wonderfully constructed the individual sections you'll visit here actually are. A great example of this would be the Flooded District, which is just section after section of just wonderfully constructed locations. This bandit enclave, for example, features a really great pitched battle as you move from building to building, ultimately ascending to a Chinese restaurant where you'll not just clear out the trash, but also discover the recipe for cockroach croutons. Further to that, you'll gain access to a detonator, an explosion will go off, and you'll probably wonder what exactly it's done. done, but vaulting over a fence with some conveniently stacked boxes next to it will find you deposited quite close to where you actually entered the area in the first place, conveniently facing you directly at a freshly created hole blown in a burger joint storefront. It's just tremendously satisfying design, one that truly takes advantage of the geography of the level itself and makes it feel much more than just a simple backdrop, a simple setting. What makes this even more enjoyable, however, is that you can scale this up from the micro of this particular section to the macro of the district as a whole. Honestly, I could gush about the flooded district here at length. It would take up the entirety of this video, but, you know, I gotta make room for another 2 mods. All you need to know is that this place is ingeniously knitted together, not just for the way that you can discover shortcuts that allow you to double back and reinvestigate anything you may have potentially missed, but in the way that the area as a whole loops all the way back round before allowing you to splinter off in a new direction. Not gonna lie, this stuff makes me moist. The flooded district also gets additional brownie points for featuring a climactic battle in a laser tag arena. Everything about it is just wonderfully ridiculous. The music, the decals, the fact that you're fighting mutants in there, and ultimately, the fact that you get a lovely commemorative photo at the end of it too. So yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. I have tremendously enjoyed my time with this demo. Very much a refinement of those foundational elements that were laid down for Ashes 2063. The gunplay remains satisfyingly chunky. The exploration is very much compelling thanks to the just heaps of detail in the environmental design. And as for the construction of the levels themselves, nice. So yeah, well worth checking out. A tremendously strong showing from front to back, and honestly, this demo makes me tremendously excited for the remainder of Afterglow itself. High hopes indeed. Something that I'm very intrigued to discover will be how the motorbike handles, because if you've got any experience of it from Ashes 2063, you'll know that it handles like garbage, so if that's improved, easy win indeed. But in the meantime, give this a whirl, and if you haven't already, by all means, play through Ashes 2063. If you like what you see here, you will not regret it. Treasure Tech. I often love Treasure Tech. Tremendously fun, fusing together elements of Doom and Wario Land in the form of one Armin Chesterfield, gun-toting treasure hunker supreme. And the one thing that I was desperate to have after experiencing the gameplay mod with its wonderfully designed tutorial level was more of that. Much more of that, please. More specifically designed levels that fully take advantage of the gameplay mechanics of Treasure Tech, and also chime a bit more harmoniously with its visual stylings. And wouldn't you know it, here we have it in the form of Treasure Tech Land. This demo comprises of 4 maps total, one of which comprising this hub map here where you can freely roam around and chat to NPC demons as well as other Treasure Tech characters. Wow. You've also got the opportunity during the course of this to unveil access to a secret map, which also contributes to that demo total. If you need a clue, it involves chucking toilets. The first level I had the pleasure of playing through here was Nighttime in Gulgo City, an unexpectedly cozy feeling level. If I had to put my finger on what contributed most to that feeling of coziness, it would probably be the warm color scheme that proliferates through the city streets, and not to mention the laid-back music track that accompanies you on your travels. It just made the act of repeatedly punching demons in the face quite relaxing. So on top of the visuals and the general vibe, what do levels such as these bring to the table that isn't typically provided in your average Doom map? Well, for one, much like the original tutorial map for Treasure Tech, you now have a smattering of smashable stone blocks during the course of a level. These can be broken using your fist, using the shoulder charge, using the ground pound, or even simply by shooting at them. For the most part, these will contain valuable gems which will contribute to your overall treasure haul. This can then be spent on upgrades such as throwing ability, ammo capacity, stamina, and occasionally you may discover that they obscure a few interesting secrets, or may even help you in terms of reaching something higher up and out of reach. As for other aspects of these levels that you wouldn't typically find in a regular Doom map, you've got aspects that take advantage of the protagonist's moveset, specifically that of the shoulder tackle. In the case of Golgo City here, you'll have an escalating series of raised platforms, a few of which will require you to shoulder dash and then take advantage of the momentum in order to clear the gap. Have to admit, it's quite a satisfying application of a movement ability, and no doubt aided by the fact that you can acquire some additional gems if you nail the arc of the jump properly. This is something that's also repeated in the other level designed by Batandi. It's got a much larger ramp and a jump, and if you nail that one just right, you'll also be able to land yourself in front of a secret treasure chest, which I failed to do here. Big sad. Something that I was really eager to see pulled off for these levels was the incorporation of the escape sequences. If you're familiar with Wario Land, particularly Wario Land 4, you'll know that at the end of the level, you hit a button, the tomb will start to crumble, and you've got to book it straight back to the entrance where the exit portal has opened. Same is true of these levels, and it's just really interesting how it's been integrated. For one, it's not a straight shot back the way you came. You'll note that on the way through a level, there's various green blocks that are transparent, but once you hit that trigger, those will become solid, forcing you to seek alternate paths back to the start. If that wasn't enough, in the case of Golgo, the escape is complicated somewhat thanks to the presence of red blocks, forcing you to repeat the tackle dash section in order to reach the trigger block that turns them back off. It's a delightfully devilish roadblock, one that certainly inspires somewhat of a degree of panic first time round, and really, at the heart of it, that's what a good escape section should have. A good old pinch of, oh shit, I might not make it in time. Next level is Aurum Castle. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Either way, it's a Batandi joint. You'll know Batandi from mods such as Golden Souls 2, and my PTSD from playing Golden Souls 2 on Soaring Comet difficulty. This one is decidedly less urban, more fantasy-styled RPG, maybe even JRPG, considering the Final Fantasy soundtrack. Feels a bit more densely populated in comparison to Golgo City, but this just provides ample opportunity to apply all of your offensive capabilities. While not quite as devilish as Golgo, this level features some fun red block implementation, essentially presenting you with a mini race against time puzzle. Racing back across these stone pillars, you have to flick the red blocks back off and cross back over before the stone pillars drop in order to access a fabulous secret. How fabulous? Well, in my case, I got an oversized CD.
Wow.
Believe it or not, Treasure Tech Land doesn't just grace us with a few extra custom levels, it also provides a smattering of extra weaponry. In this case, they replaced the slots for a few pre-existing weapons. In the case of the Wild Hunter Harpoon Launcher, you can replace it with the Blood Red Buster Shotgun. This one's pretty interesting, very powerful, but you've got to watch the heat. Once it reaches a high enough level, the bullets just flat out evaporate, and it becomes useless, so you can't abuse it too much. The other entry here is the somewhat elaborately named Lancer Delta Intrigue. This is a replacement for the Hornet. It also shoots bees. The faster you move, the faster a combo meter will rise, and if you do shoulder charges, you can overcharge that meter and get even faster bees flung into enemy faces. Secondary fire is a spread shot, whereas the Hornet is more of a railgun shot, and this one doesn't home, which is the trade-off for using this in exchange for the other. Both of them quite fun. Would shoot bees again. Ah yes, the secret map. A little unconventional in comparison to the other available maps in this here demo, but tremendously fun nonetheless. Kicks off with you chugging a speed power-up, and after that it is you versus the clock. Your only task, getting to the opposite end in time and hoovering up as many gems as you can in the process. I guess it does get a little bit more complicated with each successive lap, a number of enemies taking it upon themselves to be a nuisance by loitering in the middle of the road, but haha, I have a gun that shoots bees. All in all, quite the entertaining way to cap off this brief demo for Treasure Tech Land, something that has most assuredly left me craving more. It's a real good, solid showing this. It's one that shows an understanding of what made those escape sequences in Wario Land 4 fun, and translates them supremely well into this particular format. I'm looking forward to those levels getting more convoluted, those escapes getting more perilous and panic-inducing, and maybe the inclusion of a few more weapons in future releases. One can hope. In either case, damn good fun, well worth checking out, and if you haven't already, be sure to check out the original Treasure Tech gameplay mod. Oh hey, would you look at that? It's a Quack! Quack 2 no less! Now be honest, if you didn't already know that this was a Doom mod video, would you have assumed this was just someone's collection of custom Quake 2 levels? Because, let's face it, it looks pretty damn good. Almost bang on the money. Except for when you go underwater though, because holy shit that stings the eyes. Intriguingly, this Quake 2 Total Conversion mod actually seems to be taking its cues from the N64 version of Quake 2. That'll explain the absence of the traditional Sonic Mayhem OST, which is a crying shame if you ask me, but I'm not quite sure it explains why the barrels here have a comically cartoony bounce when you make them go boom. I have to admit, at first I was worried that this mod was going to be content with merely being a carbon copy of those N64 levels brought over into GZ Doom, but after a few familiar sections, it does in fact branch off and start doing its own thing. This includes some surprisingly early showings from typically later game enemies such as the rocket-launching Iron Maidens, as well as the Brains. These fellas, they remind me of Wall-E, only they have shields and hooks for hands, and waddle about like they've just shit their britches. Honestly, if there's an enemy type that this mod could probably do with a lot less of, it would be the Brains. They're not a lot of fun to fight. They can tank quite a lot of damage if they're front-facing thanks to the shield, and contriving a way to strike them from behind can be quite difficult, what with the claustrophobic nature of the level design. I think that's probably one of the aspects that sours me somewhat on the overall experience of this mod. It's a little too restrictive and a little overeager to cram these spaces with slightly too many enemies. You don't get a sense that you can flank, maneuver, you're just retreating, hiding around a corner all the time. And don't get me started on the abundance of nuisance enemies. Flyers can fuck right off. Parasites can fuck right off. I just get the sense that it blew its load ever so slightly too early, especially with the composition of the enemies. A lot of later game enemies turning up like right off the bat during the course of this demo. And if this was ultimately intended to be the first chunk of a greater set of levels making a custom expansion, then where do you go? Where do you go? I mean, what's left on the roster that doesn't appear here? Gladiators? God, imagine that, just a complex full of gladiators. Imagine the noise! Just a shitload of... In terms of the progression throughout the course of the demo here, it is reliably Quake 2 feeling. In terms of overarching objective, you've got to ultimately activate a teleport, but in order to reach it, you have to splinter off in a different direction, activate some stuff, attain a keycard, bring it all back to where you were in the first place, and then you can move on ahead. In terms of the locations you'll visit in the process of achieving this objective, what can I say? This mod is very good at emulating that typical style of Strug architecture, perhaps to its own detriment. I mean, there was a few sections here and there that caught my attention. This firefight through a flooded basement I thought was a neat idea. There was also a section during the comm center that had a corridor shot through with security laser blue, and visually it just popped. It looked so much more interesting, and I just found it fascinating how a simple addition such as that could bring a section of level to life. Oh yeah, and when you activate the comms array, you get to see the dishes pivot into place. Thought that was a neat touch. I don't know, I can't help but feel like I've been ever so slightly harsh on this particular Total Conversion, because it does exactly what it says on the tin. It emulates the Quake 2 experience, but, as I've previously mentioned here, almost to its own detriment. It could probably do with adding a little bit more of its own flair, you know, build on top of the Quake 2 experience, but as for what it is right now, it is a-okay. It is perfectly enjoyable, well, say mostly enjoyable to play. Fucking parasites, fucking brains, fucking flyers, fucking inexplicable lack of ammunition. I guess what I'm trying to say here is there is plenty of room for improvement. It is a demo, after all. The only way is up, and let's not discount the fact that as a Quake 2 Total Conversion mod, it does a lot of stuff right. Now, excuse me while I give myself all weapons, because there's no way in heck I'm killing 2 tank commanders with only 2 grenade rounds left. And a blaster. Now, normally I'd be saying that I'll happily be keeping an eye on this one, because I'm genuinely intrigued to see what may potentially come next, but a quick glance at the forum post for this leads me to believe that it may be a bit of a dead project, because the last update from the author on this was October 2019. So yeah, don't hold your breath. But if you want to play the demo in the meantime, as with the rest of them, you'll find the link in the description below. So this has been fun. a neat way to bundle together a few things that I didn't want to especially drag out over the course of multiple weeks. Sure, I may have bitten off slightly more than I can chew, but, you know, I had fun. And I hope you had fun too. Oh, wait, shit, it's spooky month, isn't it? Here, have a skeleton. There you go. It's officially spooky, there's a skeleton. Anyway, feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future editions of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.